In the heart of Tokyo, where neon lights painted the night sky and skyscrapers seemed to touch the clouds, lived Mika Tanaka. She was a billionaire woman, known to the world for her intelligence, sharp business sense, and the empire she had built from scratch. People admired her wealth, but few understood her. Few had seen the lonely nights she spent in her glass-filled apartment, the silent meals, and the heavy weight of expectations she carried every day. Mika had grown up knowing the pressure of perfection. Her family expected nothing less than success, and she had delivered. She had studied hard, worked tirelessly, and risen to become one of the most powerful women in the country. Yet, despite all the success, a quiet emptiness lingered in her life. The people around her, even her closest associates, treated her as an image, a brand. They wanted her decisions, her money, her influence, but they never really wanted her. That evening, the rain fell in soft sheets over the city, turning the streets into mirrors reflecting the glowing signs. Mika left her office, exhausted, her mind full of numbers, meetings, and deadlines. She didn't feel like going home. Her apartment, though luxurious and spacious, felt cold and silent. She needed a place where she could feel, just for a moment, that the world outside her walls didn't expect perfection from her. Walking along a narrow street, she noticed a small cafe tucked between towering buildings. Its warm light spilled onto the wet pavement, and a faint aroma of coffee and baked bread reached her. Mika had never visited such a simple place before, but something about it pulled her in. She stepped inside, shaking off the rain, and found herself surrounded by the soft chatter of a few customers and the gentle hum of music. Behind the counter was Amina, a young waitress with dark hair tied in a simple ponytail. Her eyes were bright, kind, and observant. She moved with grace, carrying cups of tea and coffee with careful hands, always offering a smile. Something about her presence made the cafe feel alive, comforting. Mika sat in a corner, her coat still damp, staring out of the window at the rain-soaked street. She didn't speak to anyone, didn't order anything at first, just watched the city blur outside. Amina noticed her immediately. She approached, holding a steaming cup of tea. "Here, miss," she said softly, placing it on the table. "On the house?" Mika raised an eyebrow. "Why?" she asked, her voice quiet. Amina simply shrugged, her smile gentle. "Sometimes, people need kindness even if they don't ask for it." The words, simple as they were, struck Mika. Nobody had ever offered her kindness without an expectation, without wanting something in return. She looked at Amina, this young woman who seemed ordinary in the way she moved and spoke, yet extraordinary in the sincerity she radiated. For the first time that evening, Mika felt a flicker of warmth she had not felt in years. Sipping the tea, Mika noticed how Amina interacted with the other customers. She listened carefully, laughed softly when appropriate, and never judged. Each movement, each word, seemed filled with genuine care. Mika watched her, intrigued, feeling an unusual sense of connection to someone she had just met. There was something about her that reminded Mika of the life she had left behind, the part of herself that wanted to be seen, to be understood. The cafe itself was a world away from Mika's usual environment. There were no towering skyscrapers or expensive art, just simple tables, a few chairs, and the comforting aroma of coffee. It was human and real, unlike the polished world of meetings and contracts Mika lived in every day. She realized she could breathe here, think here, without the weight of expectations pressing down on her. As the evening passed, Mika found herself talking quietly to Amina, sharing thoughts she had never voiced to anyone. She spoke about the pressure of success, the loneliness of her position, and the moments when she wished life could be simpler. Amina listened without interrupting, offering small smiles and soft nods, her presence alone feeling like understanding. When Mika finally left the cafe, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the city lights. She walked back to her apartment, her mind lighter, her heart warmer. For the first time in years, she felt the possibility that someone could understand her, not her reputation, not her wealth, but her. Mika didn't know it yet, but this small encounter would change her life. Amina, with her quiet strength and compassion, had touched a part of Mika that no amount of money or power ever could. And as Mika disappeared into the Tokyo night, a small, genuine smile lingered on her lips, a smile that promised a new beginning, one step at a time. The next morning, Mika woke earlier than usual. Her mind was unusually restless. Even though she had returned to the familiar walls of her luxury apartment, she could not stop thinking about the small cafe and the young waitress, Amina. There was something in her eyes, in the way she moved, that had left a mark on Mika, a warmth Mika had not felt in years. Normally, Mika's days were filled with endless meetings and calls. Boardrooms, contracts, and numbers consumed every moment. But today, she found herself distracted. Thoughts of Amina's quiet smile and gentle words kept returning, as if calling her to a place far removed from her world of wealth and power. Mika could not explain it, but she wanted to see the cafe again. She wanted to see the woman who had unknowingly offered her a small piece of kindness that felt larger than anything she had known. By mid-morning, Mika found herself walking the familiar rainy streets again, this time with the purpose of finding the cafe. It was quieter than usual, the city slowly waking around her. She noticed the small sign above the door, the same warm light spilling onto the street, and the soft smell of coffee as she entered. Amina was there, arranging cups and wiping down the counter. When she noticed Mika, she paused for a moment, and then her face lit up with a smile. "Good morning, miss," she said cheerfully. "Would you like your usual tea?" Mika hesitated for a moment, unprepared for the familiarity. "Yes, thank you," she said softly, taking a seat at the corner table she had chosen yesterday. The tea arrived quickly, and Mika felt the gentle warmth in her hands, a small comfort that reached deeper than she expected. As she sipped the tea, she watched Amina serve the few other customers with care. There was patience in her movements, a quiet confidence that spoke of strength without needing attention. Mika was intrigued by this simplicity. She realized she had spent so many years surrounded by people who wanted her for what she had, not who she was. But Amina treated everyone with the same gentle attention, whether a regular customer or a stranger. After a while, Mika decided to speak. "Why do you do this?" she asked, nodding toward the customers. "Why do you care so much about everyone?" Amina paused, placing a hand on a cup as if thinking carefully. Then she said, "Because everyone deserves to be seen. Not for what they have, or what they can give. Just, seen." She smiled softly, as if her words were simple, yet Mika felt their weight. For a moment, the noise of the cafe, the city outside, and Mika's own busy life faded. Mika found herself opening up more than she had to anyone in years. She spoke about her work, the responsibilities that often felt heavier than she could bear, and the isolation that came with her wealth. She told Amina about her childhood, about the expectations that had shaped her, and about the loneliness that even money could not fill. Amina listened quietly, nodding, offering small words of encouragement. "It's not your fault," she said softly. "You're doing your best." And it's okay to feel tired. It's okay to want someone to understand you. Her words struck Mika deeply. Nobody had ever told her that. In her world, weakness was never allowed, and emotions were often ignored. Yet here was a stranger, a young woman with no reason to care, who had somehow seen the truth behind Mika's careful mask. As the day passed, Mika continued to visit the cafe. Each visit was brief, but each left her feeling lighter, calmer. She began to look forward to the small moments, the quiet conversations, and the simple kindness that Amina offered without expectation. Mika realized that she had been living in a fortress of her own making, and Amina's presence was slowly showing her that the walls could be softened. One afternoon, Mika noticed a small drawing pinned on the cafe wall. It was of the city, the streets sparkling with rain, and a tiny figure holding an umbrella. The signature simply said A. Mika smiled, recognizing Amina's handwriting. It was a small piece of art, but it spoke of joy and life. Mika felt a strange warmth. She realized that this small cafe, this small person, had brought color back into her grayscale world. Days turned into weeks, and Mika found herself visiting more often, each time learning more about Amina's life. She discovered that Amina worked tirelessly to support her younger siblings, often skipping her own rest to make sure they had what they needed. She learned about Amina's dreams, her quiet hope to one day open her own little cafe, and her belief in kindness even when the world seemed harsh. Mika's admiration grew, but it was deeper than admiration. She felt something she had not felt in a long time: connection. Here was someone who did not care about her wealth or status, someone who saw her simply as Mika. It was a revelation, and it began to change the way Mika viewed herself and her world. One rainy evening, as Mika prepared to leave, Amina handed her a small note. "For you," she said, smiling. Mika opened it quietly. It read, "Even in the busiest life, never forget to be kind to yourself. You deserve it." Mika felt tears prick her eyes. Nobody had ever written something so personal, so caring, for her before. She folded the note carefully, tucking it into her pocket. That night, as she returned to her apartment, Mika felt a sense of hope she had not felt in years. Maybe, just maybe, she could allow someone to truly understand her. And maybe, she could begin to understand herself, too. As weeks passed, Mika found herself thinking about Amina even when she was at work. She had never felt this way before, drawn to someone not because of status or appearance, but because of their heart. In her world, relationships were often complicated by money, expectations, and power. But with Amina, it felt simple, pure, and real. One evening, Mika decided to stay longer at the cafe. The city outside was quiet, the lights reflecting softly on the wet streets. Amina was busy cleaning tables, humming a soft tune to herself. Mika watched her for a moment, noticing the small gestures, the careful way she placed cups, the warmth in her smile, the patience she offered to every customer. Mika realized how rare it was to find someone who gave so freely without asking for anything in return. "Would you like to sit?" Amina asked, noticing Mika's gaze. "I can make some tea or coffee for you." "Yes, please," Mika replied softly. She sat at her usual corner table, feeling a strange sense of comfort. It was as if this small cafe had become her safe place, a world apart from the pressures of her billionaire life. As Amina prepared the tea, Mika's mind wandered. She remembered her childhood, the long hours of study, the pressure to succeed, and the isolation she had felt even in her own home. She realized that all her achievements had come at the cost of personal connections. Yet, here was Amina, a young woman working tirelessly yet still finding joy and kindness in every small action. Do you ever feel tired of giving? Mika asked suddenly, curiosity breaking the quiet. Of always helping everyone? Amina paused, looking at her carefully. Sometimes, she admitted. But helping others makes life feel meaningful. Even if it's small, even if nobody notices, it matters. She smiled softly. And sometimes, helping others helps me too. It reminds me who I am. Mika felt a lump in her throat. There was a wisdom in Amina's words that Mika had never heard from anyone in her elite world. No business meeting, no mentor, no advisor had ever spoken about life in such honest terms. Amina's perspective was simple yet powerful, and Mika found herself wanting to learn more, to understand this world she had never truly seen. Over the next few days, Mika began visiting the cafe more regularly. Each visit, she learned something new about Amina. She discovered that Amina had faced many challenges in her life. Her parents had passed away when she was young, and she had taken care of her younger siblings ever since. She had worked hard to support them, often putting her own dreams aside. Yet she carried no bitterness. Instead, she carried hope, resilience, and a kindness that touched everyone around her. One afternoon, as Mika watched Amina serve tea to a group of elderly customers, she noticed how effortlessly Amina made them smile. Her attention to detail, her gentle words, her patience, it all seemed natural, yet Mika knew it was rare. She realized that Amina's strength was not loud or demanding. It was quiet, persistent, and heartfelt. Mika wanted to help her in some way, but she hesitated. She did not want to impose her wealth or position on someone like Amina. She knew that Amina valued honesty and effort, not money or status. So Mika decided to start small. She began leaving small notes for Amina, encouraging words, or sometimes paying for a customer's meal anonymously, hoping it would make Amina's day easier. She watched from a distance as Amina noticed these small gestures, her eyes lighting up with gratitude and surprise. One rainy evening, Mika lingered longer than usual, talking quietly with Amina about their dreams and fears. Mika admitted that she often felt alone, even with all her wealth and power. She confessed that she longed for someone who could see her as she truly was, not as a symbol of success. Amina listened carefully, offering gentle words of comfort. "You are not alone," Amina said softly. "Even when it feels like nobody understands you, someone always can. You just need to let them." Mika looked at her, moved by the simplicity and truth of her words. For the first time, she felt a connection that was real, honest, and unbreakable. She realized that Amina had opened a door she had long forgotten existed, a door to friendship, trust, and perhaps even love. As Mika left the cafe that night, she felt lighter, more hopeful. She knew that life would not suddenly become easy. Challenges would remain, responsibilities would continue, and the world would still expect perfection from her. But now, she had a reason to face each day with courage. Amina had shown her that kindness, understanding, and genuine connection were more valuable than any amount of money or power. Mika smiled as she walked through the quiet streets, the note Amina had given her clutched in her hand. It reminded her that even in the busiest life, small acts of care could change everything. And as she looked at the city lights reflecting on the wet pavement, she felt something she had not felt in years: hope. For the first time, Mika believed that she could allow someone to truly understand her, and maybe, she could begin to understand herself too. Days passed, and Mika's visits to the cafe became the highlight of her otherwise controlled life. Every interaction with Amina made her feel more alive, more connected to the world she had spent years avoiding. But as the bond between them grew, Mika began to feel a new kind of fear that her complicated world might intrude on the simplicity they shared. One morning, Mika entered the cafe to find it unusually busy. Amina was moving quickly between tables, her smile steady but her eyes tired. Mika noticed a hint of worry on her face as she balanced orders and greeted customers. She approached her quietly. "Are you all right?" Mika asked gently, placing a hand on Amina's shoulder. Amina paused, a faint smile on her lips. "I'm fine," she said softly, though her voice betrayed a hint of fatigue. "Just a lot of work today. My little brother has an exam tomorrow, and I stayed up late helping him prepare." Mika felt a pang in her heart. She realized that Amina carried responsibilities far heavier than most people her age. While Mika had faced pressure in her life, it had always come from ambition and expectation. Amina's challenges came from love and duty, yet she bore them with courage and patience. "I wish I could help," Mika said quietly. "I know I'm not part of your world, but maybe I could do something to make it easier." Amina shook her head gently, a soft smile forming. "You've already helped, just by listening and caring. That means more than anything." Mika nodded, understanding the truth in Amina's words. She realized that helping didn't always mean money or influence, sometimes it was as simple as attention, kindness, and being present. Later that evening, as Mika left the cafe, she noticed a small group of people waiting outside, some staring at her with curiosity. In her life, strangers often recognized her, whispered her name, or tried to approach her for photographs. Mika had grown accustomed to it, but tonight, it felt different. She felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she had not felt with Amina. The next day, Mika's phone rang early. It was her assistant, speaking in a rushed tone. "Miss Tanaka, there's a situation at the cafe. Some journalists discovered your visits. They're planning to write an article about you being there with a local waitress." Mika froze. She had never sought attention for her actions outside her professional life. She valued privacy, and the thought that her personal connection with Amina could be exposed made her chest tighten. "I don't want anyone to interfere," she said firmly. "Please handle it." But Mika knew, deep down, that the world of wealth and fame she had tried to escape would never leave her entirely. By the evening, a discreet journalist appeared near the cafe, snapping photos of Amina and Mika as they sat together. Mika's heart sank, realizing that the simplicity of their bond might be disrupted by curiosity, gossip, and misunderstanding. The next time Mika visited, Amina noticed her concern immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. Mika hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Finally, she said, "Some people know I've been coming here. I think they might write about it. I don't want you to get involved." Amina's expression softened. She placed a hand gently over Mika's. "Mika, it doesn't matter what they say. What matters is what we know. We know the truth, and that's enough." Mika felt tears prick her eyes. Amina's calm assurance reminded her why she had felt drawn to this young woman in the first place. It wasn't about status or appearance, it was about trust, understanding, and honesty. Amina had a way of making Mika feel safe even in the most complicated situations. Over the next few days, Mika watched as Amina continued her work, seemingly unbothered by the looming attention. She marveled at her strength, at how she carried her responsibilities with grace and determination. Mika realized that she had been protecting Amina from a world she had known too well, yet Amina had faced far greater challenges and had not wavered. One evening, as the rain fell softly over the city, Mika and Amina sat together at the corner table. Mika spoke quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "I've realized something," she said. "I've spent so long building walls around myself, trying to control everything. But you've shown me that it's okay to let someone in, to trust, to feel. I think I've been afraid of being understood." Amina reached across the table, holding Mika's hand. "Being understood is a gift," she said softly. "It doesn't come easily, and it doesn't come from everyone. But it can change everything, if you let it." Mika looked at Amina, her heart full of gratitude and a deep, unspoken affection. She realized that Amina had not only seen her, but had helped her begin to see herself more clearly. For the first time in years, Mika felt the possibility of true connection, of friendship, and maybe even something more. As Mika left the cafe that night, she walked slowly through the wet streets, thinking about the lessons she had learned. Life was not about perfection or control. It was about trust, kindness, and courage, the courage to let someone understand you, and to understand them in return. And in the quiet of her apartment, Mika held onto the thought of Amina, smiling softly. She knew challenges were ahead, but for the first time, she felt ready to face them, not alone, but with the knowledge that someone truly saw her, just as she was. Days passed, and the bond between Mika and Amina grew stronger. Mika's visits to the cafe had become more than a routine, they were a refuge, a place where she could feel alive without the pressures of her wealthy world. Amina's presence reminded her that life was not only about success, numbers, or control, it was also about kindness, connection, and trust. One morning, Mika arrived at the cafe to find Amina looking worried. Her usually bright eyes held a hint of tension, and she moved faster than usual, clearing tables and refilling teacups. Mika approached quietly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "What's wrong?" Mika asked softly. Amina paused, taking a deep breath. "It's my younger brother," she said quietly. "He's sick, and I can't leave work, but I'm worried about him." Her voice trembled slightly, showing the depth of her concern. Mika's heart ached. She had spent so long protecting herself from the struggles of others, yet here was Amina, facing challenges far greater than her own, carrying responsibility with courage and love. Mika realized that Amina's strength was quiet but powerful, and she wanted to help, truly help, in any way she could. "Let me help," Mika said firmly. "I can arrange for someone to take care of him, so you don't have to worry. You've done so much already, you don't need to carry everything alone." Amina looked at her with surprise. I couldn't ask that of you," she said softly. "You don't have to ask," Mika replied. "I want to. You've given me so much without even realizing it. It's time I return some of that kindness." Amina's eyes glistened with gratitude, and she nodded quietly. That evening, Mika arranged for a trusted nurse to look after Amina's brother. Amina called her later that night, her voice full of relief. "Thank you, Mika. I can't tell you how much this means to me. You've eased a burden I didn't think anyone could help with." Mika smiled, feeling a warmth she had not felt in years. It was not the warmth of wealth or power, but something deeper, the warmth of truly making a difference in someone's life. Over the next few days, Mika and Amina spent more time talking, learning about each other's lives. Mika shared stories of her childhood, her family, and the journey she had taken to build her empire. She told Amina about the loneliness she had felt despite her achievements, about the emptiness that success alone could not fill. Amina listened patiently, never judging, always offering gentle words of comfort. "You've carried so much," she said one evening. "But it's okay to let someone in. You don't have to face everything alone." Her words touched Mika deeply. She realized that in Amina's presence, she could lower her walls and be herself without fear. For the first time, Mika felt that being understood was not a weakness, it was a gift. One rainy afternoon, Mika found herself sitting across from Amina, staring at the cup of tea in her hands. She hesitated, then spoke softly. "Amina, I think I've been afraid of friendship, of trust, and maybe even love. I didn't realize how lonely I was until you showed me what kindness really means." Amina smiled gently, reaching across the table to hold Mika's hand. "You're not alone anymore," she said. "We all need someone to see us, truly see us. And I see you, Mika. Just as you are." Mika felt a rush of emotion she had not allowed herself to feel in years. Tears pricked her eyes, and she quickly blinked them away. "I don't know what I would do without you," she whispered. "You don't have to know," Amina replied softly. "Just let us be here for each other. That's enough." As the rain fell softly outside, Mika realized that her life had begun to change. The walls she had built around herself were no longer unbreakable. She had found someone who understood her, someone who cared without expectation, and someone who had become a light in her otherwise controlled world. That evening, as Mika walked home through the quiet streets of Tokyo, she felt a new sense of hope. Life was still complicated, full of challenges and responsibilities, but she no longer felt the same weight of loneliness. She had learned that trust and kindness could break through even the toughest barriers, and that connection was worth more than any amount of money or power. In the following weeks, Mika continued to balance her work and her visits to the cafe. She found herself thinking less about perfection and more about understanding, compassion, and human connection. Each time she spoke to Amina, she learned something new, not just about the young waitress, but about herself as well. One evening, as Mika prepared to leave, Amina handed her a small, folded paper. "For you," she said softly. Mika opened it carefully. Inside was a simple drawing of the cafe, with two figures sitting at a corner table, smiling. Underneath, in small letters, it said, "Kindness is always noticed." Mika felt tears rise in her eyes. The drawing, the words, and the thought behind it touched her deeply. It was a reminder that even the smallest gestures could carry immense meaning. As Mika stepped back into the Tokyo night, she looked at the glistening streets and the city lights reflecting on the rain. For the first time, she felt truly understood, truly connected, and truly hopeful. She realized that life, with all its challenges, could still be beautiful, especially when shared with someone who saw her for who she truly was. And in her heart, Mika knew that Amina had become more than just a friend. She had become a reason to believe in kindness, hope, and the quiet power of understanding. A few weeks had passed since Mika had helped Amina with her brother. Life in the city continued its busy rhythm, but Mika noticed a subtle change in herself. She felt lighter, more willing to open up, and more aware of the little joys around her. Yet, despite this growing connection, Mika could not ignore the pressures of her own world. Her business responsibilities remained demanding, and the constant attention from the media threatened the quiet life she had begun to enjoy with Amina. One morning, Mika arrived at the cafe to find Amina looking unusually distracted. Her movements were swift, but her smile seemed strained. She wiped down a table but accidentally dropped a cup, breaking it. The small clatter echoed through the cafe, and Mika immediately noticed. "Amina, are you all right?" Mika asked, concern in her voice. Amina sighed, brushing her hands on her apron. "I'm fine," she said quickly, though Mika could tell she was not. "Just tired, I guess. My shift is long, and there's a lot going on at home." Mika felt a pang of worry. She had grown to care deeply for Amina, not just as a friend, but as someone who had become a part of her life in ways she had not expected. She knew that Amina carried burdens quietly, without complaint, and it made her want to protect her. "Let me help," Mika said gently. "Even a little. You don't have to do everything alone." Amina looked at her, hesitant. "You've done enough already," she said softly. "I can manage." Mika shook her head firmly. "No, I want to. You've given me so much without asking. It's time I do the same." Amina's eyes softened, and she gave a small, grateful smile. Mika decided to act quietly. She arranged for extra support at the cafe, a few trusted helpers to assist Amina with her tasks. She also sent a small gift for Amina's family, enough to ease some of the financial pressure that Amina quietly carried every day. When Amina discovered Mika's help, she was surprised. Why would you do this?" she asked, genuinely touched. "Because I care," Mika said simply. "And because you've taught me how much a small act of kindness can mean. You deserve the same care you give to everyone else." Amina felt a warmth in her chest. She had always tried to manage alone, believing it was her duty. Yet here was Mika, offering help without judgment or expectation. For the first time, Amina realized that trust could be mutual, and that accepting support was not weakness, it was part of life. That evening, as the cafe closed, Mika and Amina sat together, enjoying a rare quiet moment. Mika spoke softly, her voice thoughtful. "I've been thinking about how much we hide from the world. I've hidden so much of myself, and you hide too, though in different ways. But we don't have to anymore. We can face life together, not alone." Amina looked down for a moment, then met Mika's gaze. "I've always tried to protect myself and my family. It's not easy to let someone in, but with you, Mika, it feels safe." The words filled Mika with emotion. She realized that Amina's life had taught her a lesson she had long forgotten. True strength was not only in independence but in trust, in allowing someone to be by your side. The following week brought a new challenge. Amina's younger brother fell ill again, more seriously this time. Mika immediately offered to take him to the hospital and stayed by Amina's side, offering comfort and support. Together, they navigated the worry and uncertainty, their bond growing stronger with each shared moment. Mika marveled at Amina's courage. Despite her own fear and exhaustion, Amina never lost her patience or kindness. She comforted her brother, managed the small tasks at the hospital, and remained calm even when Mika saw her tremble inside. Mika realized that strength was not always loud or visible, it could be quiet, enduring, and full of love. During the long night at the hospital, Mika reached for Amina's hand. "You're incredible," she said softly. "I don't know how you do it, but I admire you more than I can say." Amina squeezed her hand gently. "We all have our own ways of carrying the weight," she replied. "I've learned that it's easier when someone shares it with you." Mika felt a deep sense of connection. For so long, she had faced the world alone, believing she had to. Now she understood that life was richer, fuller, and warmer when shared with someone who truly understood you. As the night turned into morning and her brother's condition stabilized, Amina looked at Mika with quiet gratitude. "Thank you," she said simply. "For being here. For caring." Mika smiled, feeling the weight of her own emotions lift. "I will always be here," she said. "Not because I have to, but because I want to. You've shown me what it means to care, truly care, and I won't forget it." Walking back to her apartment, Mika felt a sense of peace she had not known in years. Life was still filled with responsibilities, pressures, and challenges, but she no longer felt the same emptiness. She had found someone who understood her, someone whose presence made the world feel warmer, safer, and brighter. And as the city lights reflected on the wet streets, Mika realized that this bond, the trust, kindness, and understanding between them, was one of the most valuable treasures she had ever known. Weeks had passed since Amina's brother had recovered. Life at the cafe had returned to its usual rhythm, but Mika and Amina both knew that their connection had grown into something deeper than friendship. Mika had learned to trust, to share, and to care without fear, while Amina had discovered that it was okay to accept help and support from someone who truly understood her. One quiet afternoon, Mika arrived at the cafe earlier than usual. Amina was arranging flowers on the counter, her face calm and peaceful. Mika watched her for a moment, feeling a deep appreciation for the young woman who had changed her life without even trying. She stepped forward, smiling softly. "Good morning," Mika said, her voice gentle. Amina looked up and returned the smile. "Good morning, Mika. You're early today." "I wanted to see you before the day gets busy," Mika replied, taking a seat at her usual table. She noticed how natural it felt to be here, how safe she felt in Amina's presence. It was a feeling she had not experienced in years, peace mixed with warmth, comfort, and quiet joy. As the morning passed, Mika and Amina talked quietly about small things, plans for the cafe, new tea flavors, even a little about their dreams. Mika realized that these simple conversations were more meaningful than any business meeting or grand event she had attended. They were real, honest, and full of life. After a pause, Mika spoke softly, almost hesitantly. "Amina, I've been thinking about everything we've shared, about the way you've changed my life. I want you to know how much you mean to me." Amina's eyes widened slightly, her hands pausing over the flowers she had been arranging. "Mika," she said, her voice gentle but unsure. "I know we come from different worlds," Mika continued, her voice steady now. "I know life can be complicated, and sometimes I am not easy to understand. But you've shown me what it means to trust, to care, and to be seen. I want to be a part of your life, in every way I can." Amina's eyes glistened. She took a deep breath, then smiled softly. "Mika, I feel the same. You've shown me that it's okay to let someone in, to share life, to not be afraid. I trust you, and I want to be with you too." Mika felt a rush of emotion, a mix of relief, joy, and love. She reached across the table, taking Amina's hand in hers. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried everything: trust, care, and the promise of a future shared together. From that day on, Mika and Amina's lives became more intertwined. Mika still had her work, her responsibilities, and her high-profile life, but the weight of loneliness and isolation had lifted. She had found someone who understood her in ways no one else ever had. Amina, in turn, felt supported and appreciated, her life made brighter by Mika's presence and understanding. One evening, Mika invited Amina to her apartment not for business, but for dinner. Amina hesitated at first, unsure of how her world would fit into Mika's luxurious life. But Mika simply smiled and said, "This is about us, not my world. I want you here." The evening was simple. Mika cooked a meal with Amina's guidance, laughing as they fumbled with unfamiliar ingredients. They talked, shared stories, and enjoyed the quiet warmth of being together. It was nothing grand, but it felt perfect, real and full of life. As the night grew late, Mika looked at Amina with a soft smile. "You've changed everything for me," she said quietly. "You've shown me what it means to feel, to trust, to care. I don't ever want to lose this." Amina reached for Mika's hand. "And you've changed my life too," she said softly. "I've learned that it's okay to accept love, to let someone in. We make each other stronger." In the weeks that followed, their bond deepened even further. Mika continued her work, but now she carried a sense of peace and balance. She learned to prioritize what truly mattered: connection, kindness, and love. Amina's world, once heavy with responsibility, now felt lighter because she knew Mika was there to support her. The cafe remained a special place for them, a reminder of how their journey began. They still visited often, sitting at the same corner table, sharing tea, laughter, and quiet conversations. But now, every visit was filled with the joy of mutual understanding, trust, and the promise of a future together. One rainy evening, as they walked through the streets of Tokyo hand in hand, Mika looked at Amina and smiled. "We've come a long way," she said softly. Amina nodded, her eyes shining. "Yes, and I'm grateful for every moment. You've shown me that even in the busiest life, kindness, trust, and love can change everything." Mika squeezed her hand gently. "And you've shown me that being understood, truly understood, is one of the greatest gifts anyone can receive." As the rain fell softly around them, they walked together in silence, hearts full of hope and warmth. For Mika, the lonely skyscraper walls that had once surrounded her life no longer mattered. She had found her place, not in the grandeur of wealth or power, but in the quiet, genuine connection with Amina, the black-haired waitress who had seen her, understood her, and changed her life forever. And in that moment, Mika knew with certainty that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Their worlds, once separate, had merged in the most beautiful way through trust, understanding, and the simple, powerful gift of human kindness.